possession of biological remains of non-human origin. He also describes personal encounters with an unidentified anomalous phenomena, also known as UAP. Lue Elizondo joins me now. How unbelievably exciting. Everyone is almost hitting their televisions with trying to lean in on this moment. I mean, you have written that the U.S. government has been operating a decades-long, I got to read this, crash retrieval program for these UAP, that biological remains of non-human origin have been found. Are you telling me that aliens are real?
Well, what I'm saying, Laura, first of all, thank you very much for having me on your show. What I'm saying is that we have something that is made by non-humans. So whatever that means, right? We're talking about aliens in the vernacular sense, or are we talking about something that's been here all along? There's a lot of options. We're just now at the point as a nation, as a country, as a government, where we're beginning to acknowledge this.
Why is it that there is so little transparency around this issue? I mean, what drives that decision? Is it fear? Is it lack of information? Is it something else?
All governments want to make sure that they can provide safety and security for their people, for their citizens. And in this particular case, we have technologies that are being incurred into controlled U.S. airspace and over sensitive military installations, performing in ways that we cannot replicate, and there's nothing we can do about it. So that's not a really good conversation to have if you're a military leader to have with the American people, right? Until you have a solution.
That's a really important point, because it would create perhaps anxiety with the inability to answer certain questions. And yet there are people who crave the information and want to know if it's real. And by the way, you mentioned military. I mean, there's this video released in 2017 that shows Navy pilots encountering this UAP. Can you explain what we might be seeing here?
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of videos out there, and the government has, yes. So a lot of people are familiar with the 3 videos that you're showing now, but what a lot of people don't know is there's been other ones that have come out forward from the Pentagon, where they've released it, and they said, look, we have no idea what this is. That's a perfect example. That is another example they call the silver orb. That is the famous gimbal video. That is a vehicle that is flying at altitude. It's going 120 knots against the wind. That is hurricane force winds, right? We're not talking about a balloon. We're talking about a technical vehicle that is going against the wind, and it begins to maneuver in a very interesting way. Most aircraft, because you have wings, when you turn and you articulate the aircraft this way, you lose lift and you lose altitude. That's not what we're seeing in that video. We're seeing a crash. And you can even hear the exasperation of the pilots when they say, whoa, bro, that's not a drone, dude. And there's some expletives there. And the vehicle begins to turn in a way that really, these are trained pilots. These pilots are trained observers. They're combat. Some of them are Top Gun pilots. They know the difference between an Su-22, a MiG-25, and an F-16 from 10 miles away. And what they're seeing there defies all description. In some cases, these things don't even have wings, no rudders, no ailerons, no control surfaces, no cockpits. And so therein lies the conundrum.
Wow. And have we recovered some of these crafts?
So what I can say, I wrote my book for a very specific reason. First of all, I wanted to document and record my experiences in an actual UAP program by the Pentagon. But more importantly, I had to get it reviewed by the Pentagon. I had to go through a security review. In this case, almost a year it went through this security review. And so when I finally got the book back, that was the Pentagon saying, you can publish this. It is not classified. And in fact, anything that we don't want, we're going to go ahead and redact, which I left in the book. So anybody can read and say, oh, that's a portion the government doesn't want you to see. And I kept those redactions covered so people can see exactly what I wrote.
Can I have that copy?
Well, I don't. Okay. Well, when I say the redactions are in there, what I mean is the black lines, right? I'm very careful. I still have my security clearance, and I certainly don't want to violate the law or compromise national security. But this is, I think, is important because this is the ability for me to write an experience and get it approved by the government to say you can talk about it. But that's not the only time that's happened. Recently, last year, there was a historic hearing that occurred in Congress where several people, 2 pilots and an intelligence officer, testified before the American people under oath to Congress, where they talked about none other than the potential of the recovery of advanced technology not made by humans and biological samples.
Well, tell me about those samples, because of course Hollywood has an image in our minds of what non-human biological data or looks like. I mean, look at this, from anywhere from Tesseract from Interstellar to Navi from Avatar. I mean, any idea? Just which might be the closest?
The material that I have been privy to, and I have to be, I don't want to beat around the bush, but I also am very mindful of my security oath. I can't, I'll go right up to that line of what I can talk about. I can't go over it. We had trained medical doctors in the U.S. government look at some of these biological samples and also the material, and research was done. And when they did their research, I am certainly not a scientist and I'm not a medical doctor, so we have to rely on the expertise of the scientists who supported these efforts, both in the past and in our program. And what they're telling us is that this stuff is truly exotic, that this stuff is, it would be like, people say, well, you found this material on the ground. Is it possible some sort of foreign adversary built it? And of course you have to say, yes, it is distinctly possible. But when you look on how this material was manufactured, and the precision and the arrangement of the molecules to the other molecules, we've had defense contractors come back to us and say, it's too expensive, we can't make this. And not only can we not make it now, but this material was found decades ago. So that would be like going into, let's say, King Tut's tomb for the very first time in the 1920s, and all of a sudden finding a fully assembled 747 sitting in the tomb, right? It doesn't make sense. That type of capability to make that did not exist at the time the tomb was made. And it's the same thing, same analogy with this. We have material, we know it's there, it's real, we can study it, but we don't know how it's manufactured. And it's manufactured in such a way that is very perplexing, and some of the properties are very nuanced and very interesting. And so this is why you have interest by the government to explore and study these materials.
This is so fascinating to me. It's unbelievable what you must know and what must be out there. I knew we weren't alone. And if we're not, let them be watching Laura Coates Live. Thank you so much. It's so great to have you, Lue Elizondo. Thank you. And the Pentagon saying in a statement, the program, quote, continues its review of the historical record of U.S. government UAP programs, adding that they have not discovered any verifiable information to substantiate claims that any programs regarding the possession or reverse engineering of extraterrestrial materials have existed in the past or exist currently.